Welcome to the Heart of Longevity. I'm Sandy Martin. My guest today is Sarah Turner, a good friend and colleague in the field of longevity. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you.
I,
Lovely to see you, Sandy.
I'd like to start with just a broad, open question. What does the heart of longevity mean to you?
The heart of longevity. I think what I would get from that is bringing a little bit of heart into it, because in a lot of these things, and I know you and I go to a lot of these science events, it's all about, okay, what stack can you do? What peptide can you take? Where can you go to get certain things? And actually for longevity, that there is a lot to be said for meaningfulness, deep connections, community, all of those things where you are bringing a bit more heart into the discussion rather than, just endlessly thinking, which 3 peptides do I need? How much high intensity do I need to do at the gym? Which light therapy device should I use? So that's kind of my take on heart of longevity. Those things that are really from the heart with meaning and significance.
I love that. Thank you. And you are working in the area of the brain with your company, Sarah Thrive. Why don't you tell us how the heart and brain interact and what you see in your work?
Sure. Well, like you said, I'm into light, full stop. Natural light, sunlight, that's my kind of thing. I have a technology that brings in red and near infrared light because I think that's the best way that we can mimic nature and have a therapy that is as close as possible to something that is more natural and in tune with the body. And red light therapy works by stimulating the mitochondria. And obviously we have a lot of mitochondria in our bodies. It's where we produce energy, but we have them mostly where we need a lot of energy. So we have a lot of mitochondria in the brain. We have a lot of mitochondria in the heart, in the gut, and in large muscles. So that says right there, how important these organs are for our bodies. And actually, like you say, the body is connected. The body is a system. You can't really take any one organ out of the body and start looking at that in isolation. That's the role of kind of a pharmaceutical. If you're looking at a holistic take, you need to see the body as an interconnected system. And of course, there is a gut-brain connection. There is a gut-heart brain connection. There's a heart connection. Everything is kind of working in these nested structures. So in my work, I like to look at things like, what about coherence? That we know that our body is kind of doing different things at different times. The aim is to get the body into this kind of flow where everything is acting coherently. So if we're in tune with our bodies and our hearts and our brains are in tune, then we have this coherence between the heart and the brain. And that shows up, we can measure that. You can measure it in things like brainwave and heart wave outputs. You can look to see it, is your brain and your heart in phase? The brainwaves, are they in phase, as in, are they kind of matching, or are they out of phase, in which case they're incoherent, in that maybe your heart is beating very fast, your brainwaves are kind of not catching up, you have this disconnect in the body. So from my point of view, looking at the body as nested systems rather than kind of looking at anything in isolation, I think is the way to go. And it's not just, as I mentioned at the start, it's not just kind of your biology, it's also your psychology. It has to be a mind-body connection too. How coherent are you in your thoughts and your words and your deeds? And that will show up in your biology, in how your heart and your brain are interacting. Some fabulous work has been done on heart-brain connection from HeartMath, who do various things to measure this and look at various scenarios, look at whether couples are truly connected, or look at mother-baby relationships. So definitely I'm into treating the body as a system. And the heart is a fundamental, if not, one of the crucial foundations of that biological system, from a physiological, psychological, and perhaps, maybe even a spiritual point of view.
I love that. The last time we spoke, you explained to me that there's a nuance to the headset in Sarah Thrive with the programs. We think about brainwave states being, around 4 to 6 hertz for sleep and around 7 to 8 for theta, and 8 to 12 for alpha and beta on up and so forth. But you've designed it not to be a constant. Is that right? You've you've got some movement,
Very.
yeah, some variation, some oscillation, some tell us why that's important in terms of how the body receives that information and aiding that coherence.
Yeah, sure. I think it comes down to kind of resilience in the human body. The human body, the reason we're kind of so successful as a species is because we can adapt to situations quickly. So your body has a lot of variation within the system. Your heartbeat isn't a metronome beat. Your heart has variations, beat to beat variations. And the reason is so that, you have more flexibility there. If all of a sudden a tiger jumps in through this window, if I've got a lot of variation, my heart can speed up quite quickly because, there's that variation there. Or, I want to be relaxed in this interview, I can kind of get into that mellow, slow mode, which is appropriate and adaptive. And the same as the heart can have that variation, all the systems in the body also have that variation, and the brain is no exception. So we have brain waves, we can measure them on the outside of the skull, we can measure what our brain is doing as a whole. When I'm talking about brain waves, I'm talking about hertz, which is number of times per second. So as you've mentioned, if you and I are kind of interacting now, we're kind of in this what's known as gamma, which is around about 40. Our brains are oscillating about 40 times a second. But it's not a metronome 40. It might be 38, 37, 36, or 42, because we also want that flexibility within the system. And it is probably paired actually with the variation in the heart. The heart and the brain are connected via the vagus nerve. There's a lot going on, certainly in social engagement situations like this. We have the polyvagic system where we have the heart and the brain are connecting, and those waves are having different effects. So for me, if I'm programming some technology where I'm looking to influence the brain waves in any way, I want to deliver the pulsing schedule in a way that the body recognizes. So I deliver it in a variable way. So if I'm delivering 40 hertz, which is this gamma frequency, I do it as a variation around a mean. I don't just deliver like a 40 hertz, like I'm flashing at 40 times a second. The gaps in between the pulses are variable. So that's what I call it, bioharmonic variation. Because it kind of taps into what the body's already doing. That's what we're
Right.
trying to do with a lot of this therapy, is we're trying to mimic a natural state rather than force the body into something that it doesn't recognize.
Well, the industry of longevity gets criticized fairly often for being unattainable to the average person. Um, but I think that that's why you talk about light being accessible everywhere to anyone, anytime, if they just go outside. Perhaps in London, it can be more difficult when it's overcast than in sunny Florida. But I don't know. Does it matter? Does it matter if it's overcast? If I just go outside, do I receive the light?
It matters in some instances. I mean, certainly here in sunny London right now,
Oh, nice.
we're just starting to get some UV. So it depends what we're talking about. Certainly, we don't get much UV in winter here, over here where we're quite northern. So yes, you're getting more of those health benefits of UV light if you're in Florida, but there are ways you can mitigate that. There are lamps you can get, and also the body can store vitamin D. So you just need to make sure that you're outdoors in the summer so you can kind of store it up for the winter. But things like sunrise, you can get the benefits on a very cloudy day because because of the angle of the sun on the sky, you're still going to get those rays. They're still coming through the clouds.
Hmm.
So you're right. There are things you can do. Just getting outside at sunrise, whether it's cloudy or not, is going to give you those rays that we're missing. And most people are deficient in near infrared. So yeah, you can do it anytime. And even if you're in London in a big old tower block and you can't go downstairs without seeing loads of lights, you can open a window most of the time and stick your head out. Even that, even that, so that you're at least getting natural sunrise before you look at a screen is going to help your body to kind of get into a natural rhythm. So I don't think it's any excuse, whether you're in a city or wherever you are, you can do even put your desk next to a window. There are different things you can do, even if you're kind of stuck in a big old London tower block and you're not getting as much sunlight.
So tell me something we might be surprised to know about the brain or light or both.
Well, I don't know about you, Sandy, because you've kind of been working in this industry for a while. So I don't know what I'd do to surprise you. But actually, for a lot of people, it's surprising to know that light actually gets onto the brain through the skull. Actually, that's the thing that I get pushed back on the most, particularly by doctors, is that people have this conception that it's kind of dark inside your brain. And so maybe one of the surprising things is that you can get a decent amount of light onto the brain. And maybe something that people will be surprised to know is the brain is actually emitting light as well as receiving light. So the mitochondria where we receive light, we also know that the mitochondria emit light. It's called biophotons or biophotonic emission or ultra weak photonic emission. These are different words for the same thing. But actually, your brain is not only receiving ambient light or targeted light, but it emits light. And that's probably some kind of communication within the brain. So it could explain why, if you're just getting light onto the surface of the brain, it has an effect on deep structures, because you cause a cascade of light to happen within the brain.
And are you speaking not only about technology where I would put light directly on my brain, but going outside into the sunlight, like just ambient light?
Yeah, ambient light is getting through. Yeah. And maybe your skull is even acting as a lens, like focusing that light down. It's a very macabre thing that they used to have in medieval times, where they would use a skull as a candle holder because it's translucent to light. It kind of glows like a very sinister old-fashioned salt lamp, that you might have in your room. Because the skull will glow with certain amounts of light. So it's very possible that the skull is kind of acting as a lens that's concentrating light. So yes, even if you're outside at sunrise, you're getting that light actually onto the surface of your brain. And then the body is also emitting ultra weak photonic emission in response to that light.
That is so beautiful. I never really thought about the halo effect from the mitochondria in the brain. Perhaps some people have a glow about them.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I mean, it's very ultra weak, and it's something where you normally would need they call it a biophoto multiplier, something where you can visualize it. But certainly there is this effect happening, and it could be in certain instances, the healthier you are, the more biophotons potentially you could be emitting. So that could be something going on there. It also could be involved in healing. So there's different things going on where the body is receiving and emitting light for different purposes: communication, for healing. Potentially there's some non-verbal communication that we're not even aware of there.
That's amazing. And one more question before we wrap today. What would you say to skeptics who don't understand why? Let's just say, what would you say to the 11-year-old in my household when I put light into my brain and he goes, "That's weird"? What would you say to an 11-year-old to explain why I'm doing that?
I think even 11-year-olds can maybe get the concept that we have lived for 200,000 years without walls and electricity and games and everything else. Humans survived for a very long time. So humans evolved under light. Our whole body is covered in light receptors. We have evolved beyond this planet, where our main energy source was the sun. It's very, very, very recently that we've kind of moved indoors and we have artificial light and artificial heat and all the rest of it. So really, it should be quite intuitive that we have the ability to utilize the light from the sun, because that was our main energy source for all of that time during our evolutionary history. The other way to deal with skeptics is just to get them to try it.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Always a pleasure, Sandy.